Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the very first inaugural episode of Magic Revolution TV.
Yes.
How often are we going to be doing this?
I don't know. I'm going to try to do it, I guess, as often as possible. You know, I don't think any necessarily set deadline, like for every, hopefully we'll do it at least once a month.
Yep.
And this is where we'll talk all art and magic.
So you hear that? So if you're watching this right now, subscribe to this channel so that you'll see it. I guess, how does that work? It pops up in your thing whenever.
Yeah, I think when you subscribe on YouTube, it will notify you. At least I definitely know with the channels that I subscribe to. Whenever I go to my YouTube channel, those episodes will pop up. So yes, please subscribe to Magic Revolution on YouTube.
And in case you don't know who the hell we are, my name is Damian Eccles. This is David Stupakis, and what are we talking about today?
Today, since it's 2 days till Halloween.
Uh-huh.
So since Halloween's coming up, I wanted to sit down and talk about my favorite fiction writer, and I know your favorite fiction writer, Mr. Stephen King.
Yes.
So basically, my thing is that I wanted to talk about. I mean, first of all, for me, I'm pretty sure it was Cat's Eye. Was that the one with Drew Barrymore as a child?
Yeah.
I think that was my first. That movie was my first introduction to him, and then me not being a reader of physical books, I'm a big audiobook guy, and then I think my mother, the first thing that I got when I was a kid is my mother got me Nightmare and Dreamscapes, and then that just totally blew my mind. But what was your introduction?
The very first thing I ever saw was The Shining. I still remember when it came out at the theaters, and my dad used to scare the living hell out of me because when the commercial would come on TV, it was basically just like all this continual footage of Jack Nicholson's face from all these different angles, and he was like laughing and looking insane. And my dad would turn around from the TV and look at me, and he would have the exact same facial expression that Jack Nicholson did, and I would start screaming for my mom. And my mom would come in and tell my dad, leave me the hell alone, so I'll stop screaming, whatever it is. So that was the first movie I saw.
Did you start to think you started thinking
I knew he was
Jack
crazy.
Nicholson?
I knew my dad was crazy. Yeah. The first book I ever read, I think I may have been about 10 years old or so, and it would have been Night Shift. My grandmother had it. I don't know where the hell she got this book at, because she only read like National Enquirers and Harlequin romance novels.
Yeah.
So there was this book laying there, Night Shift, and she gave it to me. She must have thought Stephen King was appropriate reading for 10-year-olds. But from then on, I was hooked, absolutely hooked on his work.
What do you think it is about his writing? Because it transfixed me. Like he is the one author that I will like literally reread his books over and over and at least twice, if not Salem's Lot's probably my favorite novel of his. I don't know. I guess it's because it's a vampire book, but it's about this community of this small town in New England, which I'm from New England, but and just this way that he captures small towns and talks about them, and you really feel like you're a part of them. But I mean, what do you think it is that makes him just captivate people so much?
I think number one, he can actually write.
Yeah.
I think in the horror genre, you have so many people putting out stories that's just for the story that they can't write. There are authors that I read when I was young. At the same time, I read Stephen King, and I'll go back and try to read their work now, and I think this is written on like a third grade reading.
Just doesn't hold up.
It does not hold up. The guy's not a writer. He's a storyteller. Stephen King, on the other hand, is a storyteller and a writer. He can write about the most seemingly boring thing on the face of the earth and still keep you interested in it because of the way that he actually writes.
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference in his stuff and other people's stuff. There are very, very few true writers in the horror genre. For me, though, you were talking about going back and reading things over and over. His book, the Dark Tower series, I've read The Gunslinger 33 times.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that I don't tell a lot of people just because it makes them think, oh, you must be crazy.
He really likes.
There are times when I would finish that book and turn it back over and just open it and read it again.
Yeah.
I started reading that book before any of the other ones in that series had came out, years before they came out. So
Which one does The Gunslinger fall into now? That's the
Dark Tower.
No, but
first.
it's the very first one though, right? Okay, yeah. I was just me and you were just talking about that. I was just listening to the audio of it.
For me, those books became like my Bible. You know, if somebody says, what's the most profound book you've ever read, the book that changed you the most? For me, it's not one book, it's that series, that Dark Tower series.
Yeah.
I think it speaks, it not only does it tell a good story, but I think it speaks to human nature, or not just the nature of what it means to be alive in a lot of ways. You know, it's about this guy that's on this quest to find something bigger than himself. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of ways, it's like our search in this world for meaning, or for God, or for magic, or whatever it is you want to call it, whatever name you want to put on it. He's looking for the very heart of that thing because he wants to understand everything.
Yeah. Another thing that I just absolutely love about him is the way that he pulls in everything. Like, I mean, obviously the Talisman, and the Black House was like, you know,
Peter Straub.
Very much, yeah, with Peter, like I know him with Peter. But those books like were obviously, you know, intentionally based upon that, but like how he brings in, you know. How he brings in, spoilers for people, but how he brings in like the priest and stuff.
Yes, Father Callahan.
Father Callahan, exactly,
Yes.
and just how he intertwines all these different characters within every stories and references the towns.
Have you listened to all of them yet?
I have. It's been so long since I've listened to the whole. I was going to say trilogy. How many books is it?
I can't even remember now.
Yeah,
so
8 or 9.
For me,
or
I usually just think of it as one big ass book. Like, it's
you know which one I haven't read still yet was the key through the
went through the keyhole.
Yes.
It's good. It goes back in time a little bit. You know, it doesn't really add a great deal of forward momentum to the story. It just goes back in time and sort of fills in a few little gaps, tells a story within a story. It's okay. I like the way he even brought himself into the story. Mm-hmm. Like, he writes himself into the story and starts meeting with his characters. One of the first things I did when I got out of prison in The Gunslinger, it talks about how, like, in every universe, in every world that exists, in every version of reality, there is a version of the Dark Tower. And in our version, it's this building here in New York called Das Hammarskjöld. That was one of the very first places I went whenever I got out of prison. I went there. In the stories, the Rose, which is like the absolute center of reality. It's the linchpin of everything, is what the tower is responsible for keeping safe. And in those stories, the Rose is at Das Hammarskjöld. So I went there just to go there and actually see in real life what I had read in these books for so many years, and it had been a huge part of my life, and I was finally able to go see it in person.
Yeah. That's sort of you gotta show me where that is. I've never been there. So,
what do you think about the new remake of It?
I don't, I mean, I'm excited for it. I haven't seen anything online really other than that one shot of Pennywise, you know, of the character. Super excited for it. I'm one of those people. I don't like, and I believe this is even what Stephen King said, or he maybe referenced another author by saying it. But it's like, look, man, if you still, the movies don't change the goddamn books. If you still want the book, it's still up on your shelf.
Exactly.
And you can go check it out anytime you want. But so I'm always excited. I'm really excited for the I don't even know what the call is. Is it called the Dark Tower?
I think either the Dark Tower or the Gunslinger 1. Matthew McConaughey playing the Man in Black. Yeah. I started reading The Gunslinger again this past week, and when I started reading it, I could see him perfectly playing that role.
Playing it.
There's even never in a million years would I have thought Matthew McConaughey when I read those books, but now that I see him in my head, it fits perfectly. There's even a scene where the Man in Black starts to bring, they call him Nort the Weed Eater. He starts to bring him back from the dead.
Yeah.
And he looks down at him at one point before he starts, and he goes, all right. And I thought, it's like it was written for Matthew McConaughey.
Whoever the producer was going through the book and going, oh my God, I know who we got to get. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I'm excited. And I think, and I believe that the actual, that actual story plot or line has nothing to, I don't think necessarily to do with any of the books itself.
Does it not?
That's what I think. That's what I read. I could
I've
be
heard
wrong.
So many stories about. Well, I've heard they're going to do like a series of movies and a TV series. I've heard it's just going to be movies. I've heard so many different stories about it. Now, I saw the other day, about a week or so ago, somebody actually leaked the trailer online, and before I got a chance to look at it, they took it down.
Yeah, because I was on some social media thing and I seen it, so I instantly went on YouTube and everywhere else and was trying to search for it, and it was gone. All you found was those cheap videos that people make to try to get watch them and stuff. Now, speaking of TV series, did you ever see Storm of the Century?
I did.
It's one of my favorites.
I've seen that probably 5 times.
God, it's so good.
Born in Sin, come on in.
Yes. And that's another thing. I mean, what he does with writing of small towns, and oh man.
And it's just you were talking about it being New England too. When I was a kid, he writes about it in a way that it could just as easily be the South.
Exactly.
Like when I'm reading it, when I was a kid, I was like, "This is every town I've ever known around Arkansas."
Relatable. Yeah, because it's all relatable to that same thing. So it always has that same vibe of it. Yeah, I just started rereading Bag of Bones.
Mm-hmm. I've only read that one time.
Oh God, it's so good. What a great story. What a
you
great
read
story.
From a Buick 8?
Yes.
That's another one. It's almost every... I mean, you have to be really hard-pressed and really go through them with a fine-tooth comb to find one of his books that does not, in some way or another, tie back into the Dark Tower.
Oh, yeah.
Every single way. People will read, like, one book. They'll read, like, The Stand, or they'll read Pet Sematary or whatever, and they don't understand. They think they're just, oh, yeah, that was a good story. They don't understand. They're just getting a tiny little piece of this whole universe that he's created. They're not even getting to the deep parts of it. They're just like on the shore, lapping at the edges.
Yeah.
You
and that
really
right
have
there
to
is
read
a true.
those.
That right there is what a true artist is. I think
yes.
too. It is just somebody who can create this entire world and just delve within and pull out all these other elements. And granted, I'm sure that maybe wasn't his intention to begin with when he first started doing it, but just the more and more stuff you develop, it's like, oh, I can bring them back to Derry, Maine, or Durham, So, yeah.
I mean, just think, he started writing when he was like, 17, 18 years old, something like that, and he's in his 60s now. Yeah. That's a lot of writing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so much that he did the Richard Bachman,
Yeah.
Because his I don't know what editors or publisher or whatever was just afraid that he was pouring out so much work.
Writing.
He's absolutely has to be one of the most prolific writers of our time. Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt.
Did you read the graphic novels, the Gunslinger graphic novels?
I didn't.
They're okay. They add little bits and pieces to the story here or there.
Now, did he write all of them? Because I remember he wrote some of them. Right?
I don't know.
He definitely wrote some of them.
I don't know if he did or not.
Yeah. There's also that vampire graphic novel comic book that he was doing too. I forget the name of it, so I butchered if I tried to say what it was. One. Yeah.
I think he is by far the best writer out there today, and I think he doesn't get the recognition he deserves because he writes horror. People look at it and it's just like a throwaway genre. They say real writers don't write those sorts of books, so he doesn't get listed. He doesn't get the credit he deserves as being one of the greatest writers of all time.
I think he doesn't get the credit that he deserves too, because he isn't some like eccentric weird writer that I think that because of his fame in this industry is so huge and tremendous that people just jealousy is a bitch.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah. We want to wish everybody a happy Halloween.
And thank you for joining us. We will talk to you again in the very near future. Stay tuned, and thanks for being with us.